Good morning, everyone. My name is Reagan Sokolowski, and I'm a Marketing Specialist 3 with ESC Spectrum. Thank you for joining us for our Reporting Errors and How to Correct Them webinar. Today, our Regulatory and Reporting Engineer 3, Hannah Harris, will debrief you on EDR errors and how to address them, as well as navigating StackVision emissions, QA, and monitoring plan files. Thank you again, and Hannah, take it away.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining my webinar today. As Reagan said, my name is Hannah Harris. I am a Regulatory and Reporting Engineer 3 on the regs team here at ESC Spectrum. I actually just had my 4th year anniversary with the company a few weeks ago, so it's been quite a learning experience. So I can imagine with any position related to SEMS management and generating EDRs that they're either daunting or you've just learned along the way like I have. So without further ado, this morning, we are going to discuss EDR errors and how to resolve them via ECMPS and/or your DOS systems. When I get to the DOS section, I do have a primary focus on StackVision, but near the end of my presentation, I do have a few resources for PRISM errors that we've seen come up. So I didn't want to leave anyone completely out if you use either application. But I will say there are a good amount of errors that can be resolved in ECMPS along with your DOS system. It just kind of depends how familiar you are with it, but that certainly just comes with time. And if you can't figure it out in ECMPS, certainly we can discuss where those errors are originating from in your DOS. Okay. So to begin, I wanted to take a bird's eye view on EDRs and then narrow in on how they generate errors in the first place. So let's start with what an EDR is. Here I have the formal definition as defined by the EPA. I won't rattle that off, but in other words, your EDRs are one of the main goals of your SEMS and what we do here at ESC Spectrum, really. They are certainly the bread and butter of what I do on the regs team. You want a clean submission of your monitoring plans, any QA files, and of course your emissions, whether they're 0 hours or a full quarter of operating data. So your EDRs tell the story of how your SEMS operated for the previous quarter or the previous time frame that you are submitting them for. And then the EPA or your states, I guess if you're in Pennsylvania, depending on how you report, actually take that data and help to create laws that then circle back to your sites and truly how your SEMS operate. So you can kind of understand why they're necessary, but also why they're probably a little bit nerve-wracking at the same time because you want your data to be accurate and reliable. All right, so here is a screenshot from ECMPS of what goes into your EDR files. They include your monitoring plans, which is the monitoring tab there you see at the top. Any QA files, so things like your linearities, your RADAs, your GCVs, etc. Any QA cert events, so these are any certification events that you might have done related to SEMS maintenance. These are required for things like an analyzer changeout, umbilical maintenance, or really any major SEMS maintenance that is referenced in the Table 12 guidelines for SEMS certifications. You can find that table in the Part 75 policy manual, or even a Google search, really. Sometimes I have to do that too. Next, there's something called the tab that says test. It's actually for test extensions, which I haven't really needed to use until this quarter. I have a customer that uses duct burners and combustion turbines, and they have 2 separate time online parameters. But the issue with ECMPS is that it can't tell the difference between 2 time online parameters. And so since that duct burner was offline, we don't want, or I guess it wasn't offline, but it didn't have a QA quarter, and we don't want ECMPS to count that combustion turbine time online as a QA quarter for the duct burners. And so what the site will have to do is submit something called a non-QA DB test extension, and this can be pulled out of StackVision or PRISM. I guess I haven't had to do it out of PRISM yet. And that will help them to extend their QA test deadline. And then of course, you have your emissions that include all of your hourly data and totals for the quarter and year. And so next I'm going to go into how to decipher if the EDR error that you're getting can be solved in ECMPS, which is the screenshot that I have here on the left of the client tool. I know that 2.0 is coming, we just don't know when, and I don't have any information on that. And then on the right is a screenshot directly out of StackVision. So here's one of the first most common errors that I see related to ECMPS. This first error shows you the severity which is critical, and then the check code, which is just the way that ECMPS categorizes all of their errors that they have, and then the result message. Oh, I apologize, that's a little bit blurry. So it says at least one QA certification event associated with this monitoring configuration has not yet been evaluated, and then kind of tells you what needs to happen. So this error is saying that a QA test related to the data has not yet been evaluated. And a simple solution for that is all that you need to do is, I recommend checking both the QA test box and the QA cert events. It can be trial and error sometimes, but you always want to run a complete history over those and then rerun your files, and then be sure to check your monitoring plan, QA test, QA cert, just go through the whole list again and see if that clears it. And if it doesn't, it could be that you have a test in your DOS system that hasn't been submitted yet, and it's in your ECMPS. Again, that's just trial and error, but the first course of action would be to run a complete history over anything QA related. So QA tests and QA cert events, and go from there. And of course, as we go through some of these errors, if it doesn't work, you can always reach out to ECMPS support, or, you know, obviously ESE, and we're more than happy to help you. Another common error that we see is related to your primary element inspection tests. These are due every 3 years. This one here is relating to the component ID and test numbers. So these are what are submitted to ECMPS and how they kind of find those tests. I have the solution here as invalidating the hours listed in the error. So on the far right where it says begin date and hour, those are the hours after the PEI expired in the DOS system. So in this case, it was StackVision. I guess there are a couple of different scenarios for getting this fixed. So one could be that you actually did a PEI and didn't submit the test, and we just need to go ahead and get that submitted so that the hours in the error are validated again. It could be that the test was entered incorrectly, and so ECMPS is reading it as being expired for some reason or another, or you need to resubmit the test correctly. In that case, you need to reach out to ECMPS support and remove it. And when doing that, it's really important to have what's in the result message, so the component ID and the test number. And if you find out that for some reason or another that the test is actually expired, you will need to go into your DOS and mark the hours on the error message as invalid, which in StackVision it's missing an invalid, and that'll help to clear the error. Oh, and this is an example that I had for one of my customer sites. This is a PEI that was entered in StackVision, just to kind of show you where the test would come from. So this is tools, QA and certification, and then fuel systems, and it's listed under the, I think it's other tests and exemptions down here at the bottom, but I guess you can't really see that. But yes, this is where the PEI test live in StackVision, and you can kind of verify, well, I did put in the test, here's all the information, or also verify that you didn't. This next error is related to values between ECMPS and StackVision. It says the hourly adjusted value reported in the DHV record for NOx is inconsistent with the recalculated value. So in layman's terms, it's saying that the NOx values that are calculated in your DOS do not match what ECMPS calculated on your emission files. So for StackVision, my first course of action would be to rerun Process Now. And if you don't use StackVision, Process Now is the task that we use to basically run all of your calculations and pull all of your math together. And sometimes it doesn't always calculate perfectly. There could have been a change to an hour of data in the system. So for example, in this one, it's 8:16, hour 18. That hour could be missing, it could have been changed, it could be marked invalid or for some reason or another. But the best course of action would be to rerun Process Now, double check it, and then compare between StackVision and ECMPS. And that's what I have here. I would go to Tools, Data Lab, pull up that hour and the NOx parameter in question, which in this scenario is NOx pound per mm, and just kind of verify the values and then compare it to the totals or the hourly value in ECMPS. Here I have heat and input pulled up, but it would actually be your NOx rate SIMS tab here, and you would just compare the values. And if they're off for some reason, you can either try to rerun the math yourself or just reach out to ECS support and we'll get it figured out for you. This one comes up pretty frequently. It's actually can be related to that last error that I saw. So it's when your year-to-date totals don't match. In this scenario, it's the NOx totals and the heat-in totals don't match. And in StackVision, we have something called a cumulative emissions report. It's actually on this next screen. And this is where you would verify what your totals actually are. You can check it quarter by quarter or even month by month if you need to. And what you then need to do is to compare these totals to ECMPS, which I think I had on this last one. So these total all hours down here, you want to verify those numbers match with what's in ECMPS. And if they don't, you'll have to resubmit a quarter, depending on which one is different. And those numbers can change. If you rerun process now over previous quarter, it can rerun math if any hours were changed, and it'll change your totals. That's usually the most common reason that I see that people have to submit, or if you have like a new NOx emissions rate and you want to recalculate all the data for that quarter. So that's definitely a good reason to resubmit. And then some of these last ones, we have resources in our customer community where you can pull up different articles. If I didn't pull up an ECMPS error that you don't usually see, you can go in and type it and check our knowledge articles. Just enter the error code that you're getting and it'll typically pull up an article if there's one attached. There are very few instances when we don't have one listed. So this one, for example, is for our ECMPS error DayCal 28F, and this is related to your calibrations. And it'll go through the solutions and steps on how to resolve them. So in this case, in CalLab, you just need to pull up the date and time that's on the error. Or no, I'm sorry, this is cylinder management. Right? Yes. So sometimes you'll see in CalLab that your PGVP information is missing. So things like your expiration date, your vendor ID, your cylinder gas combination, sometimes those things are missing. So you'll want to verify that in CalLab, pull up cylinder management, and just type in that bottle that you see where that information is either incorrect or missing, and update it and regenerate your EDR files. So that's the steps that you see are listed here. And then we have a few more. So this one is related to Prism. I have one Prism customer. I'm not in there as often as I would like. But if you have any Prism errors, again, our articles will cover those as well. This one is related to our AD4B, and this is related to the gas or oil time not matching the time online for the unit. So in ECMPS, they want to see that you are combusting and your time online matches. And if it doesn't for some reason, you'll have to go in to your DOS and find out where it's not matching up, where your totals are different, and verify that that time online is correct, or that you were combusting anything. This next error is for our AD10E, and this is for resolving volumetric flow rate reported in the HFF record. ECMPS doesn't always write their errors in English, which I've come to find very often. So this error is due to one of three reasons. Startup or shutdown has very little time in the hour where there was not enough fuel registered by the meter to use. There was an issue with the fuel meter and it did not report any fuel use during the time period, or the unit was not actually running at this time. So what you'll want to do is go through those three steps, verify each one, and you typically should be able to find where the error is coming from. Here at the bottom, we have a few notes. If one issue was causing the error to mark the fuel data missing in the data editor, just go back and mark it not missing so that it's valid. Or if the issue was caused by the unit not actually running during that time, then in Prism, use the data editor to turn the online signal off during that hour. I actually just had to do that last quarter for one of my customers. Another Prism error that we see very frequently is the hour AGG and then any number associated with it after. So this is similar to StackVision where your year-to-date totals don't match the calculated value in ECMPS. It's a little bit more intensive in Prism, but certainly you can get the error resolved. Just check your quarterly cumulative emissions totals and then compare them in ECMPS. So if you have a report like that in prison, I don't know if it's auto-generated or one that we need to make for you. And then compare the values. Yes, the PRISM cumulative emissions report to the quarters in ECMPS, make sure that those match up. And if they don't match up for any reason, you'll need to resubmit the quarter that the hours don't match. And then here at the bottom, we have a note, and this is certainly something that I send my customers anyway, how to resubmit. So you'll need to submit a resubmission request form, which looks like there's a link to it here, but if anybody needs that, I'm more than happy to send it out. We do a lot of resubmissions just for, for various reasons, but you'll have to include a detailed reason for the resubmission and then allow ECMPS technical support to reach back out to you to let you know that the submission window has been reopened, so that then you can resubmit your files and make sure that that same error is not popping up. I will say for QA files, I feel like people sometimes forget, if you have not submitted a QA file, you can submit them at any time. You don't have to ask the EPA for permission. The only difference is if that QA file was already previously submitted and you made a change to it, you would then need to reach out to ECMPS support and say, hey, I need to remove this file, and you'll want to reference back to, let me go back to the slide for the PEI. You'll want to use the information here, like on the PEI, if you had to resubmit this. Again, use the component ID and the test number along with the unit and your ORS code to let them know that that test needs to be removed so that you can resubmit it. But if that test wasn't submitted, you can submit it anyway. I know it's a lot, I'm saying a lot of words. It just certainly comes with practice. And then lastly, here are some of our resources that we have available. I use Salesforce. I don't know how the customer communities comes up, but I think it's just a product of Salesforce. But if you have a customer communities account, you can access our FAQs, any other various ECMPS error that comes up. We could certainly spend hours going over every single one that ECMPS certainly possibly has. There's just not enough time in the day, but I just went over a few of the most common and reoccurring that I see from a quarterly basis. You forgot to evaluate your monitoring plan, you just need to do a complete history, you just forgot to include a QA file, or you just need to double check that your emissions totals match, and if they don't match, let's take a deep dive into why that's happening. And if you don't have a customer communities account, we can certainly set you up with one. Reagan and myself can get you that information, but it would be this link here. If you just clicked on it and had an account, it would automatically take you to our communities and you could search articles. Lastly, if you don't want to do that and you just have a few spare questions, this is my information. I'm available mostly by email, but certainly feel free to call me. And then this is our support line. I find it easiest to just email support directly with any questions or issues that you might have related to your DOS system, or certainly call and we can get you in line with somebody.
Thank you, everyone, and go have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Hannah. You did an awesome job.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.